Welcome to the Double Vision podcast. We are identical twin sisters who grew up with a rare retinal condition, which basically means we've had to do a lot of adapting. My name is Janelle, and I'm the oldest by 4 whole minutes, so naturally I get to go first.
And I'm Joy. A lot of our life has been problem solving, a lot of feelings, and realizing that we're probably not the only ones navigating this.
I work as a therapist, and I tend to slow things down and look for what's steady underneath it all.
And I'm a writer and creative. I have a background in education, and I navigate the emotional journey in real time.
She does, and we balance each other out.
Janelle keeps one foot on the ground.
And Joy keeps things honest and alive.
On Double Vision Podcast, we talk about the social and emotional experience of being in a body.
The stuff we all deal with: identity, belonging, and self-trust.
We talk about anxiety and overthinking,
and what it looks like to advocate for yourself and keep going, even when it's hard.
We make space for the parts that don't show up on paper, but shape our whole lives.
If you've ever felt like you're trying to figure out how to be yourself out loud,
you're in the right place. Hello, Double Vision listeners. This is Joy, and I'm going to welcome you to our episode with a little story to frame our conversation today. Rewind 25 years ago when I was applying to my very first teaching job. The feedback that I was given after the interview when I was not offered the job was that I did not make good enough eye contact. Now, whether that was true or not, because I could make pretty good eye contact at that time, but I do think this principal had been tipped off that I had a visual impairment and was maybe looking for something. Fortunately, there was another principal a few weeks later who was willing to give me a shot. Hence began my 25-year career in education in all sorts of roles and with all sorts of ups and downs like many careers have. Being someone with vision loss, mine maybe had some more specific ups and downs related to accessibility, sometimes discrimination, and sometimes just a lot of creativity to do my work. Fast forward to a couple years ago when I was up working very late at night on some forms. I was actually preparing 504 plans for students who need accommodations at the charter school that I work at, where I'm now the director of intervention. But at the time, I was a coordinator and I was preparing their documents, and there was not a lot of accessibility in this work. And so I found myself working really late hours, just trying to fit in a work day what my sighted colleagues could easily do within 8 hours. And I was continually staying up until 11, 12 at night just to get my work done. As I was working on this accommodation for access for a student, because for those of you who do not know what a 504 plan is, it basically gives student access to their education. It's accommodations like speech to text, text to speech, extended time, sometimes extra support from the teacher. I had this aha epiphany moment as I was basically driving myself into exhaustion that I had not been asking for accommodations of my own, that I needed to do that same work. I realized, oh my gosh, I don't think I know how to advocate for myself, because I was so afraid from just being in this system that I consistently felt less than. I want to blend in. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be extra work for them as an employer, because I had this fear for my job. It was at that moment that I actually checked my email and had received a message about this advocacy training program from Prevent Blindness. I was at first a little skeptical of the name of the organization, but as you'll hear in this conversation, this is not something to get fooled by, because there are many meanings of names and a lot of history to it as well. My cohort was led by this really compassionate and wise woman named Grutzmacher, who is going to be joining us today. And she really helped me to work through my story and frame it in a way that really came from a place of empowerment and strength, but also in recognition of the system that I found myself in. That was why I also recommended the program to Janelle, who completed it and also found it to be very powerful. And someone in her cohort named Janetta Price is also joining us today. And you will get to hear her story near the end of the episode. So don't stop this one before the end because honestly, her story is more like spoken word poetry. It will change your perspective about not only advocacy, but even maybe about blindness. It's a goosebump chills kind of story. So we are so pleased to have Julie and Janetta joining us today. And kind of in true aspect form, I started with the story, but I want to say that my story relates to this piece of data that, according to organizations like the National Federation of the Blind, they estimate that 70 to 75% of the blind community is not currently employed. And some even say that that's conservative, that if you look at underemployment or people who are in positions that are lower than their level of expertise or education, that the number is more like 75 to 85% of people not employed. And that begs the question of why. Why is that? What are the barriers? And so my story lends itself to the reasons why the workforce can be such a challenging place for people from the blind community to thrive in. And yet there are, people doing it and it's a lot of hard work. And so I think in recognition of that and the advocacy skills that maybe that unemployment rate could be a little bit lower if people had these advocacy skills. I didn't really gain this training until, 20 some years into my career and have found it to be so helpful. While this isn't, an ad for this program because it's absolutely free, it is one that we want to highlight because we see the power in it. We've gained so many wonderful friendships and connections through this program. You're going to learn everything today from the definition of the word chicken thunder. So stay tuned on that one to the incredible advocacy that's being done on Capitol Hill and the trip that all of these people who've gone through the training program are invited to be a part of in Washington, D.C. And also just about how it's not really just for people from the blind and visually impaired community. It's professionals, it's friends and family members as well. And so without further ado, we would love to welcome Julie and Janetta to the show.
And we're going to start off with Janetta, who I had the honor of meeting when she was my group leader for the Divine Nine, the Aspect program. And I'd love for you to just tell listeners who aren't familiar with the Aspect program what the Aspect program is, Janetta.
Well, the Aspect program is where we share stories chased with the truth, and that is the truth. Everybody have an I story, and every I story matters. That is the space that the Aspect program hold in this world, where I stories can come together, all by sharing our truth. So that sums it up pretty much.
Stories do something to us as humans. There's neuroscience to back this up, that when a listener is truly engaged in a story, there's a neural coupling that happens where, the heartbeats start to sync and the neural pathways start to sync as well. The science is behind the power of it. It hadn't really been done in this space before, in the, blind and visually impaired space. And so this was an opportunity to train individuals who have something to say and want to make really positive change in the world, to give them the confidence to live their truth, to sort of, reflect on their own journey and experience with their eye condition and everything else, and to, in many ways find some sort of meaning or, self-reflection from that, to then be able to share and to help other people and to create the positive change that so needs to be, created in this world to really help, especially the visually impaired and blind community.
This is Joy again. When I joined the Aspect program, I just heard it was, an advocacy program, you're going to learn advocacy skills. And so I was thrilled when I joined and I found out, oh, this has storytelling, because I honestly pictured it was going to be a lot of data. And we dug into obviously demographics and so many different pieces of how blindness impacts different groups. But at the heart of it was the storytelling, which I connected with. I'm really curious because, the name of the organization, Prevent Blindness, I would imagine for some people who maybe have conditions or accidents where it's not preventable, but they're still part of this program, how you marry those two of having these participants who are crafting stories around oftentimes being proud of their blindness and yet being part of this organization with the name Prevent Blindness. And the reason I'm really curious is because I was part of a conference last year where we had Foundation Fighting Blindness as one of our vendors. And one of the students at the conference came up to me and she's like, I lost my vision at age 1 from something that wasn't preventable. She's like, why are we fighting against blindness? This is kind of making me feel bad. And I really had to kind of wrestle with that and say, well, she's like, I thought this was about celebrating blindness. And I was like, oh, it is. But there are conditions where there are treatments or there may be treatments. And so for those, I think I kind of stumbled, like I'm stumbling right now. So I'm curious from the both of you, how you.
Listen, this is a hot topic in the blind community, and thank you for bringing it up.
Yes.
So this is Janetta speaking, and I am a blind woman. A proud blind woman.
Yes.
And when I say prevent blindness, sometimes only the blind see that I'm only talking to the blind. But we have some sighted people in this world that's blinded, that we can also prevent blindness by shedding the light on blindness so people can be aware of it. Also, I am a proud blind woman, as I say that boldly and confidently, that me sharing my story to prevent blindness does not take away for me appreciating my blind community, because I have been more successful as a blind woman than I ever been as a sighted woman. Okay. However, when it comes to me, sharing your story is a personal journey as well. So it depends on where space you in life. But when it comes to me sharing my story to be able to help the next Janetta preserve her sight and not go through. I didn't had over 20 eye procedure, and I'm in the process of a cornea felon at this time. Okay. However, when I realized that my condition, like I have aggressive glaucoma, keratoconus as well. So I didn't had like about 5 transplants already. But to know if I could have caught this early, it could have been preventable, that I wouldn't have to go through all that I went through. That's why I'm sharing my eye story. If that'll help you say, you know what, let me go get my eyes checked. That is not a flaw. That is a flex. So just expanding your definition of preventing blindness as a whole. Okay. So it's about spreading awareness. It's not about taking away from being a proud blind person. All right. It's about taking ownership of your story. Because many times we're victims in our blind story. But what we do in the aspect program, whatever your story is it preventable or not? We take you from victim to victorious. And that's a celebration of what you have overcame throughout the process. Okay. So I remember when I first started losing sight, I thought my life was over. Right. So now I can share my story, celebrating, yes, that I was in a dark place, but yes, it is light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, it is resources out there that help and shape and mold me to the woman I am today, to the advocate I am today.
This is such an important topic, and I'm glad you brought it up. A name is really an important thing, and there's no doubt that our name, Prevent Blindness, can, turn certain people away. And I think I'll just share the history of how we got our start, which was, we've been around since 1908. And at that time, we were really focused in the New York area, New York State. And our mission was to prevent one type of blindness, which was due to untreated sexually an STI, sexually transmitted infection that would happen, actually be passed during the birthing process. And the blindness was called ophthalmia neonatorum. And so our efforts were focused on, it was like a philanthropist coupled with a doctor who were working to, one, they noticed that this was happening, that babies were going blind from this infection. And they realized that they could deliver the drops that are now, most babies throughout the U.S. receive the drops in the eyes after they're born, or the ointment on the eyes. And that still to this day is a reflection of our advocacy efforts, how that led to eventual policy change and to, practices that would prevent blindness early on. But so that was our early days. And then over the years, we really started to expand into workplace safety. So in factories, for instance, it really encouraging workers to wear safety goggles to prevent anything from getting into their eyes and causing injury or blindness. And then it really expanded across the lifespan, so that today we sit on many different coalitions, probably about 26 different coalitions, working first, yes, to prevent blindness or preserve sight. And that largely is a reflection of, due to various chronic conditions that a lot of people do not have awareness about, including myself before I started here, about how it impacts the eyes. Autoimmune diseases, for instance, can impact the eyes. Diabetes, certainly. But even hypertension, medications can impact the health of the eyes, So really trying to get out to the public the important message that, hey, whatever you put into your body and the health of your other body systems, organs, impact the eyes. And so if there is something you can be doing, that's good to do to preserve your sight. We also recognize that, I think, over time, and I think the Aspect program has been a real title change for the organization that we're still pretty new to, is that we also really, as treatments have evolved, because I hear my CEO say, he's been with the organization for 23 years. Even just 23 years ago, a lot of conditions, there was no treatment for it. And there still are a lot of conditions there aren't any treatment, but there more and more are treatments. And so there's now things that people can do, And so as that has all kind of changed, we've also realized that becoming blind is not a death sentence. And so how can we further support and advocate for policies and systems change that really support our friends in the blind community? And so that's why we sit on all of these coalitions and why we're part of these committees, in DC, working to address those policy issues. And so, yes, while our name still reflects and our mission still much is very heavily focused on the prevention side of things, we also saw that there was need to, in addition to advocating at the legislative level and working on the policy changes and systems, that we wanted to develop a program that would really equip the blind community and their allies with the skills to be able to continue to raise their voices, because there are so many societal beliefs, limiting societal beliefs that we know are out there and that we want to see changed as well. And so how do we do that? But through stories and through a training program that really empowers people to share their perspective, because how else can you change minds but through these, the real life experience. And so, there was also the FDA, the push for the FDA requiring pharmaceutical companies to show that they're working with people with lived experience. And so that kind of came at the right time for us to develop this Aspect program too, so that, we can have a group of advocates ready and trained to share their perspectives, so that if pharmaceutical boards call on them to speak on their advocacy panel, they'll feel comfortable doing so. And it all starts with kind of helping them tell their story, and then they can choose to tell it in many different forms, the 30-second version or the 5-minute version.
I loved hearing what Janetta shared and then what you shared, that multiple things can be true at the same time. It can be true that we want to really honor the lived experience and some of the joys and growth that can come from losing vision and from having these experiences with vision loss, but also that we can work to prevent diseases that are preventable and to create legislation and policies that really support overall eye health care. So thank you so much to both of you for sharing that.
You've heard a lot of people's stories, and you worked with me on my story. After all of these different people that you've worked with and heard, I'm sure there's some that stick out more than others, but is there kind of like a human through line that you relate with? I know you yourself do not have vision loss, Julie, but is there something like that's just very human that you keep seeing as a pattern almost related that you connect with human to human?
Yes, I think I have always been drawn to what happened in your life. How has it impacted you? What did you learn? What do you have to share that could help somebody else? I think I've always just operated on that belief that, I'm going to learn something from somebody if I ask enough questions, if I listen deep enough. And with that curiosity, I've brought that to aspect. And what I've really just enjoyed so much is the connecting of dots that happens, I think, for a lot of people. When we provide a framework for people to reflect on what they've gone through, how certain circumstances have impacted them. Maybe it's the first time they've ever taken that time to analyze it, to reflect on it. Maybe they're working in the field, but they haven't told their own story. Maybe they're a lawyer in some cases, and they've been advocating for other people for a lifetime, and they've never actually advocated for themselves in this way of telling their own story. It's a difficult process. It's messy sometimes. It brings up painful memories. And so we do our very, very best to not re-traumatize and to, put the guardrails around, that and the safety of that. And we pull back when needed, when it doesn't feel safe. And that's why, in recruiting Liz and Janetta, I was very careful about who I chose, and they have the skills and expertise and credentials that, I knew was needed in this regard, because safety is so very important. But there is power in reflecting on your own experience and all of the pain that might accompany it, and putting it together in a synthesized way so that you can impact other people. That's really what it's all about. It's the motivation to help other people maybe feel less depressed, or maybe get the resource they need at the right time, or there's so many different motivating factors. But I think the human element to me is that we are here to help other people. And how do I feel like we do that? We do that through stories. And there's just no end to how I've been moved by the human spirit, the triumph of the human spirit. No matter what the circumstances are, there's so many different lives. Every story is different. Every story is unique. And yet the unifying factor is that if you're in this class, you've connected the dots somehow in your own life, and you're learning something that's going to impact somebody else for the better.
Yeah, and I would love to share with you. I don't think I have, because I haven't really been in touch since I finished the program, but I would love to share on a personal level self-advocacy in my job that this program helped me develop and how I used it. Because of the program and being able to really synthesize my story as an educator, being a blind educator in a field that is predominantly full of sighted people, and that isn't really one that people with disabled bodies are in as much. We like to serve a lot of people through IEPs and in special education as students, but we rarely hire them as adults, interestingly enough. And so I oftentimes would not ask for what I needed within, both as a classroom teacher and then even further on as I've developed into leadership roles. And recently, I really needed to advocate for a database program that is not accessible and that I need to access daily. And I think in the past, maybe before going through Aspect, I would have probably been like, hey, that this needs to change. These are the reasons why. This is, but when I met with the team of developers and the company, which, fortunately they were really willing to listen and they had like 10 people, I remembered the skills that I had learned and how to synthesize it in a manner that was more story based. I can ask my team members about the data and to look things up for me. I can do that fine, but I just want to let you know the impact on me day to day when I'm not able to have this information in an accessible form at my fingertips, what position that puts me in when other people can access information that I need to lead and direct a team that I'm not able to readily gather without asking somebody, what that is like for me on a day-to-day basis. And while I have an incredible team, that really puts me at a bit of a disadvantage as far as being able to converse in real time about the students' information when it's not accessible. And I felt like them hearing the impact on me motivated them. I don't know for sure. And this wasn't just for me. I was thinking, okay, of all blind educators or with other disabilities in the future who need an accessible program. This is a very, very large company we are working with that's across the country of if I don't speak up, who will? And if I'm not able to articulate in a way that makes them motivated, I mean, they told me they did not have the budget for these changes. And yet by the end of the meeting, they were basically emailing me and telling me, but we will do everything in our power when we're able to work on making this more accessible. And so, yeah, whether it happens or not, I feel like I've done my part and I had a voice in that. And that was thanks to the Aspect program. So wanted to share that first.
Oh my gosh, I am nodding my head. I am like smiling over here. I want to jump up and down. This is like so amazing and what it's all about.
Absolutely. That's what keep us going and going. The testimonies of every individual who have came through the Aspect program, that just out you just lit some fire under me.
Same.
Okay.
Same.
The power of your voice and just sharing your testimony that would encourage others to speak up.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, because advocacy, I mean, I remember a participant in our cohort saying that he was exhausted from advocacy because he had been advocating for so many things his whole
Mm.
life. And so I felt like giving him the ability to be able to then work with his story and his part in it, that kind of takes the exhaustion away in a way. And I think sometimes we're looking at these things in these very, very large policy levels of, gosh, what can we really do? And it seems so overwhelming that, like, what can I do in my little corner? And so to put it back to the story, really gives people their power back and lets us each do our part. I'm wondering, what is the most, from both of you, I guess, what is the most exciting piece of policy or something that you've seen change? I know you guys go to DC every other year. Like, is there any policy that you've seen changed recently, or a story from someone that you feel like is worth sharing for our listeners?
Well, I will just share because I really do think so. A couple things picking up on the exhaustion piece of advocacy and policy. Policy really is an endurance game, in my view. It takes a long time. I think in many cases can take a long time to get policy changed, and yet it is so needed. I haven't yet. I've been at Prevent Blindness for 6 years. I haven't yet seen, major policy change happen. I don't think that's, totally unheard of. But we have had small wins from the Aspect participant. Ever since we had the Aspect program, we went from what used to be an advocacy day with Prevent Blindness to they would fly in probably about, I don't know, 20 or so people from, across the US to go to Capitol Hill. And ever since Aspect program, we have double, tripled those numbers. And then in May of 2024, we brought 100 blind and visually impaired advocates to the Hill together, and just the force and the power in that group when we showed up, white canes, guide dogs on the hill. That to me was the most powerful moment of my career so far at Prevent Blindness, because it represented such hope with what's to come. We have had incremental increases in the budget items that we've asked for, namely the CDC funding. We went from, I think it was 4 million one year up to 6.5 million, and now that's dropped down to 2 million, I think. So there's been fluctuation based on the administration and priorities of the administration. What really stands out to me is the hope and promise that comes with this force in this community that this program has established.
But one thing, just to add to Julie, is the various opportunities. Once you connect it to the Aspect program, after the program, it's not over. It actually just got started, right? So one thing I love getting those testimonies. Oh, Janetta, I had a speaking engagement here. I shared my story there. Like those, man, that is priceless to me. So the Aspect program, we're planting seeds of hope, across the world. And it's a beautiful thing. So with that being said, I'm no longer going to talk about it. I'm going to share my story. And I thank you guys for the opportunity to have us on today. So here we go. I remember when I first heard those words from my ophthalmologist. You're not blind enough to be considered legally blind. You're not blind enough to receive benefits. I'm sorry, you just not blind enough. To be honest, I had enough because I was blind enough to lose my job. I was blind enough to lose my driver's license. I was blind enough to lose my independence. I was blind enough that I could not see my face in the mirror for years. I cried because I could barely get a ride. I was blind enough to lose my voice, afraid to be seen, on the scene, running from the light, bumping into the dark. I prayed that no one could see my blindness. For this reason, I pretended to be sighted as I missed the curve and fell into a deep depression for years. I was mentally ill with no will to live. Glaucoma was my death sentence to me. I isolated myself, racing thoughts of suicide. I'd rather be dead before I live in the darkness. I questioned my purpose, and on purpose, I told myself that I had no purpose. To be honest, I was humble. Check this out. I'm not walking with that stick. Don't you dare call me the B word. According to my doctors, I'm not riding on that little bus. I realized that I was holding me back. I cried out to God. It was He who set me free. That day, I made a conscious decision to live, heal, and forgive. That's when my life turned around. My last exam, yep, you guessed it. I'm blind enough. Well, chicken thunder. I live happily ever after. Of course not. In order to heal, you must keep it real. I learned how to be invisible. And now I had to unlearn those unhealthy behaviors in order to unlock the door of self advocacy. This is the season for me to be seen and heard. Um, Excuse me, Professor. Could you please verbally say what you are writing on the board? With frustration, Miss Price, you can't try to see? Hmm. Absolutely. Every day. Every day I try to see. But on this day, I could not see past the embarrassment as I felt the eyes of my peers because, yes, I was the only one who was blind enough that I could not see the board. I hid my face as I raced out the class. This is no act. I remember like it was yesterday. I shut myself in the house, and this was between us, you and me, God. Teach me how to live this blind life. I began to research disability rights and advocacy groups for the blind. I refused to be left behind. I learned to be my voice. I no longer was uncomfortable being seen in the room. In fact, I extended my white cane, swung my hair back, and put an extra twist in my hip. Now, when I walk in the room, I'm serving light. I live happily ever after. Of course not. Now, since I possess the will to win, I am accomplishing my goals, and adversity don't want to mess with me. Well, simmer down, JP. See, no matter how driven you might be, there will be some challenges along your journey that will give you the opportunity to quit. Oh, that remind me. My professor in the master program for clinical mental health counseling told me to quit my first semester of grad school because she never seen a blind counselor. She critiqued me on clients' visuals. Janetta, can you see the client facials? No, ma'am. According to research, audio cues are more powerful than visual. This semester was indeed a challenge until I aced my first test. Then she had to put some respect on my name. I do believe in second chances. With that being said, that same professor became my mentor and great friend. She shared with me it was another blind lady before me that wanted special treatment, not reasonable accommodation. It did not excuse her behavior, but now I understand that she thought we were one of the same. Yes, blindness connected us, but we are individuals. All I can say is my professor once was blind, but now she can see. A blind therapist, and that is me. That's right. I am Janetta Price, the blind therapist, and yes, I'm blind enough to let you know that losing sight does not mean your life is over, but a new beginning. I'm blind enough to advocate for myself in blind America. I'm blind enough to believe I could be what society told me that I could not be. I'm blind enough to be the change that I did not see. I'm blind enough to zoom in a room and to be heard and seen. Thank you, guys.
Yay, I'm applauding.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
yes.
That's like spoken word.
What did I tell you, Joy?
Yes.
Yeah, incredible, Janetta. I had
had
heard you
chills.
share
I
that
had
with my
chills.
cohort, and yet all over again, it's like I'm hearing it for the first time because it's so incredibly powerful the way you deliver it, the choice of words, and I am just really touched by your story and your openness and authenticity in sharing it with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just want to say I encourage all the listeners to share your truth. And we're open to any and everyone who want to share your truth and you don't have the confidence. And a lot of times people look at me and they say, Janetta, they think I'm some type of, like super blind person. No, no. That's why I share my story because people can see our glory, but they clueless of our story. And so I really want to reach that community who have given up and think that their life is over because they lost sight. It's not over. It's not over, but connecting to the community, connecting to positive people, utilizing your resources is a game changer. The Aspect program is a resource. And we're so excited to be able to share with the world your story.
I love that. And I want to just add to that. Janetta is one of a kind, baby. She is her play on words, like her wordsmithing, like I mean, like I said before, just genius, creative genius. I also want to say every story is different, and so my story does not ring, like it doesn't have that beautiful poetry throughout. So we want it all.
Yes.
Not one is better than the other. It's about being your authentic self, and whatever, how you want to say it, how it comes out, it's got to be true to you. You can't try to mimic anybody else. Like I will never be Janetta,
Yes.
And so it's
There's only one Janetta, I can tell.
there's only one Janetta. There's only one Liz. There's only one Julie. And so,
Yes, I just want to just support what Julie is saying. Like sometimes people can be a little timid. They like, Janetta, I'm not like you. You're not supposed to be like me. you
Right,
know?
right.
So be you.
Yes.
Be you. And we can't say that enough. Be you, and we gonna help you. Okay?
Yes.
Because your story matters. And it's not supposed, if we all get up there and sound like Janetta Price, people is gonna think something is truly wrong. Okay? So trust your story.
Yes, I so agree with that, Janetta. And this is Janelle. I appreciate how you also said before you shared your story that being part of the Aspect program is just the beginning,
Yes.
and there's so much more to come. I had the opportunity last May to be in person with you and Julie at Prevent Blindness working on some projects related to mental health. And on that trip, I also got to taste your mom's amazing sweet potato pie. I mean,
That's the
Ooh.
and
That
pie.
weighed 7 pounds too, and she
yeah.
had to take it through TSA.
Yes. And nobody was worried about me when I got to Chicago. They was just like, did the pie make it? Oh, did the cake make it? I'm like,
That's so funny.
Oh yeah, I was texting Janetta for weeks after. Can I have that recipe? I need that recipe. I can't stop thinking about that pie. Tell your mom I love her pie. I mean, it was so incredible.
So
and
funny.
you also taught me the power of the phrase "chicken thunder." I had never heard chicken
chicken
thunder.
thunder.
Okay, do tell, because I don't know that phrase.
So chicken thunder is just a freedom of expression. And if anybody that's connected to me, they know that I use the language chicken thunder. So growing up, I'm from Texas. It, it was an older lady. She used to say, we didn't know what it mean. We used to just laugh. Me and my sister, we were so silly. And so we go, what it mean? She said, it mean whatever you want it to mean. We was like, okay. So we began to just say chicken thunder, and it was like a language between me and my sister. Like when we see something that make us laugh or something like that, we'll look at each other and be like chicken thunder, and we'll just take it to the next level, which it really worked on my mom nerves. And the funny part, when I worked at the high school, the kids, they can use some undesirable language, right? So I told them like, hey, um, one guy, he was end up being suspended because he used some unlikable language to his teacher, and I said, try using chicken thunder next time. It'll prevent you from using undesirable language. And so he came back. Him and the teacher just didn't get along. He said, the teacher, Miss Price, she tried me today. I said, well, you didn't get suspended. What happened? He said, I looked her dead in her eyes and I said, well, chicken thunder. I said, well, what did she do? He said, she looked me in the eyes and she cracked up laughing. I said, oh my God.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so all my high school kids, they're like 25 now. If I'm in the, community, they like chicken thunder.
I love that. Oh my gosh, what a joy it has been having both of you on today. We so appreciate you coming and talking with us. And I'm curious if you can just tell our listeners as we wrap up, if anyone is interested in the Aspect program. I believe it's for people who aren't just blind, right? Even just professionals or who just want to become advocates. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. It's open to people who are in medical school, who are students of optometry or ophthalmology, public health professionals, researchers, anyone working in the field, occupational therapists, O&M specialists. So if you have an interest in being an ally or, want to learn more, you can join this program. So it's a smaller subset, the ally group of the cohort, but yes, absolutely, they are welcome to join.
What about family members of people who are blind, or do you try to keep it just professionals?
Oh, we definitely welcome family members.
We encourage family members.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, that's great. I also think this is such a fun group. We're going to invite our amazing guests, Janetta and Julie, to play Twin Telepathy. So Joy is going to start us off with the word. All right. The word is chicken. 1, 2, 3.
Thunder!
We're all connected.
Awesome. I feel like that was a mic drop, okay?
Yes, it was.
We might have to title this episode Chicken Thunder. I don't know.
Oh.
If someone wants to find your website or your YouTube channel, where can they go?
Sure. They can go to preventblindness.org. And if they wanted to find the Aspect program, it's preventblindness.org/aspect. And then we do have an Aspect specific YouTube channel, which can be found under our social media on the main page, preventblindness.org.
Thank you both so much for joining us today. This was so much fun. We definitely want to have you back on a future episode.
Thank you both for having us.
Yes, stay tuned because Aspect is on the move. We're doing some great things, and I can't wait till the world find out. So stay tuned.
Yes.
Thanks, ladies. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Double Vision Podcast. The stories and perspectives shared here reflect our own lived experiences with blindness and disability and do not represent all blind or disabled people. This podcast is for conversation and reflection only and is not intended as therapy or a replacement for professional mental health care. If you're enjoying the show, please rate and review wherever you listen. You can also leave us a voice message at 949-414-8336 or email mail@doublevisionblog.com with any suggestions for future episodes or comments. Special thanks to our production team, TLS Productions and Benjamin J. Thomas.